Remember the first video of mine you ever saw? Wasn't it great? Well, probably not. You're just engaging in a bit of omoide hosei. So this term literally means like memory adjustment, memory correction, but does not refer to like actually altering your memories. Rather, this refers to the act of reminiscing about something in a way that overlooks its flaws or exaggerates the positive elements. Even though this may sound like something that could be understood in normal conversation, this definitely is a slang term, although I should note like it has its own Wikipedia page. It was just made this year, but it exists. And I guess in theory then it might even just make sense in normal conversation. But if you want to see a real use in action, here we go. This person, for instance, says that they went back and played the old Battletoads game and notes that it was omoshiro sugite, or too interesting, and then that their memory was not an omoide hosei. In other words, it was actually just as fun as they remembered, although I don't know how that's possible given that they played the level that you see there. For all you Zoomers watching this video, that's harder than Elden Ring. Grammatically though, omoide hosei is often used with the particle de, like via a memory correction, as you can see in this example here, wherein somebody notes that they can watch this movie with memory correction on, but honestly, it's just, to quote them, an awful B-tier film. The opposite of this, omoide hosei nashide, you can see here, where somebody says that this game is fun even without any memory correction. So the memory of the quality is not an incorrect one. And you can combine omoide hosei with a lot of verbs quite easily. The easiest one is just via suru, right, to do memory correction. But a more interesting conjugation you can see here in shitemo. In other words, they're saying that even with memory correction, they think that the prior bowl of ramen was more delicious. And there are other collocations between a verb and this noun, such as ofukumeru, which you can see here, wherein somebody says that allowing for, or like including these memory corrections of the last time they had this beer, ordering a pint of it this time was the correct choice. Now, the various websites that talk about the history of this word in Japanese assert that it came from 2chan. But is this correct, or is this a bit of omoide hosei in terms of how innovative 2chan was? Well, Google Trends only shows interest in this term since 2012, but there's no question that this term predates Twitter, as I can find uses from the earliest days of Twitter, as you can see in these tweets from 2007. So remembering that 2chan has existed since 1999, I did a Google date search, and honestly, the oldest hit I could find was this blog from 2006. Now, obviously, my data here is going to be flawed in that 2chan deletes its posts, but it looks like there's not even a preserved thread somewhere that uses this term. So I can't evidence earlier use, but if this term spawned in the early 2000s or something, that would not surprise me. There are also then a number of like subversions of omoide hosei, like variants of it. One example, for instance, is youshou hosei, which is like youth adjustment, which implies specifically that you remember something as being really good because you were young. Likewise, hatsukoi hosei, or first love adjustment, refers to you over-evaluating something because it was the first one that you liked, as in this picture of Kamen Rider, where someone says that this is their favorite Kamen Rider series, but there's probably some correction there because it was the first one that they enjoyed. And then like shudan hosei, or like group correction, refers to thinking something is better than it was because it is super popular or because there's a lot of hype behind it that remains. The person here has a very straightforward use where they say that they're going to evaluate the anime Sengoku collection without any shudan hosei, or in other words, without giving in to general discussion of the popularity. That said, there is kind of inconsistent individual use with a lot of these terms. For instance, this person uses shudan hosei when talking about some Warhammer figures that they painted. And in this context, you can see that this does not have to do with like a past memory, but rather they're saying that they painted them individually at, quote, the lowest level, but when you put them together, it has that group correction where it actually looks like it's pretty well done as a whole. This kind of complication is especially important when talking about the phrase jidai hosei, or era correction. Because, for instance, Nico-Nicopedia states that this is very, very different from an omoide hosei in that a jidai hosei refers to something being good for the time, but it may actually be bad now, whereas the omoide hosei, of course, is just that it actually wasn't that great in the past. But there are other websites that say that this differentiation is something that only a few people follow, and from what I can tell, yeah, you're going to see both this meaning and just the general meaning of like, my memory of it is better because it was in the past use. This person here, for instance, is quite ambiguous. They're talking about how much they like a song, but noting that it does have shonen jidai hosei, or correction from the time when they were a young boy, a young lad. But does this mean that it was good for the time it came out, or does this mean that their memory of the past is altering their current perception? It's not really clear. On the other hand, for this discussion of whiskey, I think it's very clearly the one that Nico-Nicopedia talked about. For instance, they note that the whiskey is good, but note that this take is influenced by lower prices back at the time that they used to have it, as well as jidai hosei, which we could interpret to mean that back then there just wasn't as much good whiskey around, or perhaps they weren't as familiar with high quality whiskey. because they are saying that their enjoyment of it right now is less than they remember. But on the other hand, a post like this, which talks about the quality of some pop songs, could fit in either category. Are they saying that pop songs are good because at the time they came out, there was nothing like it? That's quite possible, given that they say, like, thinking about this from the 2010 perspective. But they also end by stating that they think the song still kind of has it, and then wondering if this is jilai hosei from when they were a child, which in context could mean that, again, enjoyment that is altered from the fact that you've been listening to this since you were a kid. Honestly, I'd say it's likely that both of these interpretations exist, which of course means that you're going to have to be careful when you encounter these kinds of various hosei variants online. So if you've seen these kind of things in the past and you thought that it was very, very simple, that there was just one consistent use and type of omoide hosei out there, well, I'd have to say that's a pretty big omoide hosei.